Meow meow. Hello everyone, I'm Captain Shar. I'm mostly a retro gamer. Sometimes do reaction content over on YouTube here, and sometimes over on Patreon. But we're over here on YouTube today, guys. So, but you can always check out the other one if you want. Anyways, we're just gonna check out how Mario Kart 64 fakes difficulty. Now, I have an idea on how this works, but you know what? Let's just hop into it.
He is zooming! He's zooming! He's at it!
Link to the original down below, of course.
To the average person, this looks like cheating, and many would say that the AI in Mario Kart 64 are programmed to cheat. And well, while it certainly isn't fair, this isn't entirely the case. In fact, this is a feature that many may not understand, since they are always certain that the AI is just cheating for no reason. But when looking under the hood of Mario Kart 64, things become clear. But still, where do these CPUs suddenly get the ability to perform at the highest level, to a level that could easily be considered cheating to a wide variety of people, and how do they do it? Well, to answer that question, I actually want to give
if you get too far ahead, you always get sacked of blue shells typically, or you would anyways. And if the if the CPU gets too far ahead, if the like the PC or the CPU or AI gets too far ahead, they just seem to once they're out of render distance of the player, they're basically just gone.
A personal story of mine. Now, I was a kid born in the mid to late 2000s, meaning that I never owned my own N64 when it released because, well, I wasn't alive.
I wasn't alive then. Okay, I told this story a few times on stream. My 64 is the very first 64 I ever touched. By that, little story time, sit down kiddies. My 64 was a movie store's demo unit, and by that I mean it was the first system they got. And by proxy, the one day I went in there to rent a game for the Super Nintendo, and they were like, hey, check this out. And I got to go over and hold a 64 controller and control Mario in Bomb Battlefield for the first time ever. Now, fast forward, they're phasing out the 64s and all that. Whatnot, things are winding down in the rental industry for the most part anyways there. And so I have now, we bought the 64 through the store, had the original box, everything for it still. And so I now have the very same 64 that I had when the first one I ever touched, basically. It's still got its markings on the bottom of it to tell you that it was movie store property still. Not Blockbuster. My Resident Evil 2 is Blockbuster though for 64. And I recently this year I refurbished the whole thing, new thermal pads and everything. So it's been working like a champ.
Live yet, but that doesn't change the fact I grew up playing this game. I remember countless nights playing this with my brothers, having fun with friends, or even challenging people to time trials for an entire day to see how fast we could finish a race. However, the thing I remember the most about Mario Kart 64, and the reason why I always have had some sort of vendetta,
I always felt though, after me and my friends eventually got the expansion packs, because like Majora's Mask and Donkey Kong 64, etc. needed it. We felt like the first time I put the expansion pack in, the game changed. I don't know if that was one of those, you know, young kid memories, whatever, but it did feel like the AI in the game took full advantage of it, even though it wasn't supposed to. It does feel like the extra RAM did something to the CPU players.
Against the game was the times when I played alone, by myself against the CPUs of 150cc.
Oh, yeah, they're
now,
brutal.
it didn't matter what cup I played or what track, because little me always ran into the same issue. Peach. Every single race that I would play, for some reason, I could just never escape her. I would play my heart out on Royal Raceway, Choco Mountain, heck, even Bowser's Castle, but somehow, someway, she would always be one step ahead of me. Now, I couldn't tell you why it was always Peach for me, and even the data.
Peach was a lightweight character, if I recall, so a lot of things wouldn't slow her down, because there was weight classes introduced in 64. I know there was weight classes in the original, with Bowser and DK being heavies. And I believe, I don't remember now if it was Toad and Peach were the lights. I think so, because they both threw the mushroom specials, and everyone else just being normal weight class. I don't know. I don't remember much. It's rough out there for me.
This video couldn't explain that, so maybe it was just a Mandela effect. However,
Maybe.
while I thought that Peach just could not be stopped when I was younger, there is reason behind all of this.
Monkey.
First of all, we need to look at how these CPU characters are actually coded to act, and for that we need to look at something known as the rubber band AI. For those who aren't familiar, rubber band AI is essentially an algorithm put in place to increase the difficulty if it sees you performing well, while also easing up on those who may not be doing so well. This is actually used in a lot of games, and they don't necessarily have to be racing games. For instance, games like Left 4 Dead 2 that have no racing whatsoever uses heavy influence of this rubber band AI.
I don't know if it predates it. GoldenEye Rogue Agent was toted. I have it over there sitting on my shelf. That's what I'm looking over. It was toted for having quote unquote evil adaptive AI. And I don't remember which was the first one that came out, that or Resident Evil 4 that I played, because naturally I had played those two beforehand. Cause I know Resident Evil 4, the original, has adaptive AI. If you suck, the game lightens up on you, and if you're constantly getting hit, speedrunner uses this as a tactic. The game, if you keep getting hit with speed as a speedrunner, basically the game takes it really easy on you, but if you're doing really good, the game pushes more enemies and gives you less ammo.
When you perform well or have your full team alive or don't lose much health, the game might throw a lot more zombies or a tank at you at random.
Okay, this is bullshit, and I can tell you this right now. You can loot... Okay, at least for the vanilla maps, I'm pretty sure this might be fine, but the AI director I noticed, at least now in Left 4 Dead, if you guys don't know, I used to do Left 4 Dead Sundays, exploring new maps, community, new made maps and all that. It feels like now they throw special infecteds in waves of 3 at you, regardless how many teammates you have alive. It feels like. Now I don't know if that's just a thing of the custom maps or Left 4 Dead 2's AI is just that different. I don't know. No, this is Left 4 Dead 2 right there. Never mind. I don't know then.
But if you are hurt, losing teammates, or just having a rough time in general, you can often find more medkits and other useful tools around to help you out. It's honestly a pretty great system because games without them can lead it to being either unfair or downright easy depending on its placement in the difficulty spectrum. However, these are more modern experiences. Mario Kart 64 had to work with the Nintendo 64, a console that was delving into uncharted territory with 3D, so the rubber band AI naturally is not going to be as neat and tidy as it is in other games. As a result, it isn't uncommon for the rubber band AI to have people miles ahead of you with no chance of winning or even boosting CPUs to unimaginable speeds who may be significantly farther behind. But how does this work? Why do they suddenly gain or lose speed, and how is the physical driving actually
I noticed this as a kid. Me and my friend would notice this because we used to play Mario Kart 64 and GoldenEye 64 like religiously when we hung out together. We would notice that the CPUs would be so far behind, and then when we finish, like, the times made no sense at all. Because, fun fact, when you finish a race, you get your points as well as your times. So it's kind of like, okay, why are these times not making any sense? And that was it, I guess.
Well, for starters, at the beginning of every single Grand Prix you will ever play in this game against CPUs, there will always be between 2 and 3 CPUs that automatically get assigned to you as a rival of sorts, for lack of a better term. The job of these rivals essentially is to set the pace of the race, ensuring that you and only you don't get too far ahead of them no matter what. For instance, you will notice that no matter how well you may be doing at the front of the pack, there always will be at least 2 people within close proximity of you while everyone else is noticeably farther behind. And of course, these are your rivals. But if you somehow manage to play a really great game and get some good items to get rid of them, they shouldn't be really anything to worry about. Right? Well, not really, because if you were to, for instance, hit my rival, Peach, with a red shell, which would knock her back significantly, her rubber band AI grants her...
I always wondered why they used Mario Kart 64 for the most part. They used mixture of the English sound effects and the Japanese sound effects. It was strange. But hey, whatever.
better item logic, tighter racing lines, and more aggressive catch-up behavior that aids in her recovery to get her right back to the front with you. We all saw the clip at the start of the video with Donkey Kong, but if we look at what happened before that, we can see how this AI is really coming into effect. All the footage for this section of the video goes to Counter, and this video will be in the description, but as we see, he is tow driving in Banshee Boardwalk when we see Donkey Kong just drive off the map. Now keep this in mind particularly because we actually will come back to this in just a second. But of course, he fell off the map, so he should be very far behind at this point, especially since Counter here isn't necessarily in the highest position at 5th place. But as soon as he gets spawned in on last place, look at how fast he goes.
He's all the way in last. Keep an eye.
He's
Zooming. He's zooming. He's zooming.
Oh, yeah.
He's zooming.
He's
zooming. He's zooming. He's.
Haha, sorry, the name speeds my game.
He's coming up, Roma. He's going.
Within 30 seconds, Donkey Kong managed to go from last place all the way to 3rd where Counter was, and as we saw, he was going at unbelievable levels of speed. This is a result of the rubber band AI granting DK access to a combination of better item logic and tighter racing lines to get him to his destination quicker, which in this case was his rival, Toad. Okay, well, I did say the rubber band AI catered to the less fortunate, right? How do the rivals and all the other racers react to the player performing terribly? Well, once again, as we saw from this clip from Counter, he started the video in 5th place, which obviously is not the best position, and as a result, the AI for Donkey Kong here got sloppy and misjudged a corner, leading him to fall off the map. This isn't the only way the AI caters to the less fortunate though, because have you ever been super far behind in this game and needed to catch up? Well, if you have, you'll know that these guys racing seem to be taking a calm drive without a care in the world because you can breeze past a couple of them. But anyways, the rubber band AI is just one singular piece of the puzzle, because let's look at other behaviors relating to the item boxes. I'm guessing the item boxes are rigged to what slot, what position you're in. For a hypothetical example, let's just say that you and a CPU racer are right next to each other heading into the first item set, but you manage to get the item box before them, leaving them without an item, of course. Well, if you wait a couple of seconds and keep your eye on that CPU, sometimes you'll notice that voila, they have an item. This means that the AI is essentially programmed to get an item box even if they don't physically run into it, giving them the chance to get overpowered items that, depending on the situation, they may not even use. There are a lot of cases where CPU racers will withhold certain major items like red shells and blue shells due to the fact that it would end the race before it even started, and of course, as we have seen, that's the last thing that they want to do. But what happens if the CPU gets hit with items? I still have this item from the item box, so it still should work even if they don't have an item, right? Well, it depends. For example, if any racer in this game gets hit with a red shell, they get sent soaring through the air while tumbling and then have to recover from a complete stoppage of speed. And most of the time, this applies to the CPUs as well. They get hit and get sent flying into the air just as the player would in every circumstance. However, sometimes these CPUs do not experience the same effects. If the CPU is off the camera, out of the perspective of any watchful eyes, it isn't uncommon to see them take a much less substantial hit to their driving ability. As instead of flying through the air, for instance, and landing with a crash after the impact of a red shell, they will simply just stop and then go back to racing like nothing ever happened. This happens nearly every single time a character is out of frame, because the items in this game are the one thing keeping them from doing what they need to accomplish, keep the race close, and they would be willing to quote-unquote cheat to do that. But while a lot of times this does happen off camera, there are still plenty of times where this can happen right in front of your eyes in a normal race. For instance, have you ever felt like an item that should have absolutely devastated a racer did nothing? Well, on the one hand, it could be a result of the terrible pathing these items have in this game, but it could also be because something like a blue shell didn't do what it was supposed to. If the CPU is just nearly almost out of frame for the player to see them, sometimes they won't take the damage completely because they think they are clear from the player's view. And this is one of the many things that can eventually lead to the extreme first place CPU who will always be in front of you no matter how hard you try to catch up. This is even applicable to the most devastating item in this game, the lightning bolt. In most cases, it can cause people to get smushed, pushed off the map, or realistically any other possibility. However, just take a look at the specific footage from modern vintage vintage gamer and tell me what you see. Yeah, I don't think I need to explain to you guys why that makes no sense, because apparently the CPUs have the ability to just drive on air practically when they are off camera, because of course they gotta keep pace with the player or else it won't be interesting. But it's not always the devastating items that get these CPUs, because other items like simple bananas can cause this as well. Usually when you get hit by a banana, you kind of slip for a second and then spin out, which can be really bad on courses like Yoshi Valley we just saw that have no fence.
A little trick: if you hit B in the original, in Mario Kart 64 at least, when you hit a banana, you can recover from it. You don't spin out. There'll be a little music note that appear above your head, but you'll be fine.
To protect you from flying off the course. Well, just take a look at this clip and tell me what you see. The CPUs just kind of sit there for a second and spin out without really any consequence. Obviously, they slow down, but even the heavyweight characters like Bowser or Wario would be able to catch up extremely quickly even if they were to touch it. Now, there is something to say about the entire fact that this game was on the hardware of the N64, and the lack of animation from the racers when off camera is most likely done to save CPU cycles, animation memory, and collision resolution steps. Now, there is another factor to this equation, and it is slightly more complex than just simple CPUs completely ignoring the standards of traditional item box collision, as in this game, the racers have a very unique pathing system. This pathing system assigns a character to 3 main sections of the road: the left, the middle, and the right. And these characters will generally stay in these lanes until the lane is obstructed with something in which they will move to a safer lane. This is most clearly seen on tracks like Luigi Raceway, as it's pretty clear that there are 3 distinct lanes of traffic, and it's pretty easy to see people merging between lanes as well. Now, this isn't in every single race in the game, as in Toad's Turnpike, obviously the constant flow of traffic can mess up the flow of this, which leads to them all having their own unique pathing that isn't necessarily defined by the 3-lane algorithm. However, this gets really interesting when you add obstacles in tight spaces. For instance, in this other clip by Modern Vintage Gamer, we can see that on Bowser's Castle, the characters notice that there are bananas covering the ground in front of their path, forcing them to swing out wider, which usually would have them run into this wall at the bottom of the stairs. Right? Well, usually yes, but not here, because they just simply phase right through the wall. There are a lot of instances where this is applicable. You can actually see this sometimes on Toad's Turnpike, as although they don't have set pathing, sometimes it doesn't work and they run into the cars, and other times it doesn't work and they phase through the car. Or on Calamari Desert, where sometimes instead of waiting for the train like everyone else, they will just go flying through it like it wasn't even there. The CPUs are just here to ensure they keep pace with the player, and they will do absolutely anything to make it possible. But at the end of the day, this was a system put into place to simply make the races more engaging. However, I just feel like this was never implemented the way it should have. Mario Kart 64 is the perfect
I'll stop you right there. I know I'm almost at the end. There's a lot of things from the 64 era were just experimental, because it was all brand new. 3D was new. Mario 64, like, look at, I suggest check out Kaze's video if you're interested in stuff like this. Kaze's videos on Mario 64's quirks, we'll say. It was not really well optimized. The 64 is capable of doing near GameCube level graphic fidelity. I say near, but you need to be like really good at what you're doing with it, as well as actually doing steady 30 FPS, if not more, I think. But hey, I'm not like the programmer or nothing. I don't know much, but hey, check it out, like I said.
Example of a game that took rubber banding a step too far, especially since the game is often characterized as
Mario
being
Party
unfair. Even a younger version of myself could see it, and I didn't even know this existed. All of this is done to ensure that there is never a true breakaway, and if there ever was one, it certainly wouldn't be the real racer who does it. But that's all I've got. Thank you guys for watching, and let me know if you have ever experienced something like this, but goodbye.
Yeah, I've seen it firsthand. So that was by Quack, by the way. QWACK. Like I said, a link to the original down below, guys. That was fun, though. A little bit of knowledge, like, and yeah, I've been around since, like I said, I've been around since basically the Atari 2600 days. So, anyways, that's it for now. We'll catch you next one. Bye.